Hey, good morning, everybody. Robert Phoenix here, broadcasting to you live from Fredericksburg, Texas. How is everyone? Look a little shabby today. At least let me button up one button here. Let's do that. Here we go. Sorry for the delay. Had a bit of a technological issue today and had to do a lot of rebooting in order to get to today's show. So, how is everybody this morning? Hey, there's Judy Anderson. Good morning to you. Buenos dias, Senorita Anderson. Uh, just gonna hang out for a little bit, relax, stretch into everything. Good morning, Justice Moody, Chief Justice Moody. Hey, there's Terry. Hi, Terry. Welcome to the chat. Good to see you in here. I know you've been listening for a while. There's Justin. Hey, Justin and Justice. We got Justin and Justice. Cool. Excellent. Right next to each other, too. Sort of a syncy moment. How is everybody? It's cold here in Fredericksburg. Very, very cold. Hi, Kathleen. It snowed in North Carolina. I know they predicted that, right? They saw it coming, which they often do. Snow in the Carolinas. How lovely, I guess. No, the owl. The owl is still in a state of illumination. It's still you can see that the third eye of the owl is still being illuminated. It's a very deep and profound process. You can't hurry enlightenment, but when it comes, you have to just submit to it and surrender. Ani Brito, hello Ani, good to see you. How's everybody doing with this Mars Pisces, Mars conjunct Neptune energy? Ooh. I've had some experiences around it, not pleasant ones. Yeah, not pleasant ones at all. Yeah, I took last night off. Did the webinar on Saturday, and hey, what's going on, Steve and Chris? Happy New Week. I know, right? Judy's got restless energy. Yeah. So the Mars Pisces conjunct Neptune energy is hey, there's Edgardo right on, and Cheeky Monkey. Love all the morning symbols. It's bright here. We got some sunshine. No wispy trails, streaky lines dripping down from our skies. So far, so good. All clear in Fredericksburg. So this energy, I've found that it has been really, really good for people who want to get shit off their chest. Hey, Joe, and point their fingers at other people and scapegoat. This is big time scapegoat energy. It is. And so if you have the ability to detach and depersonalize, I think it could be very helpful during this time. Very, very helpful. So that's just been my experience. That's part of it. And a high degree of emotionality. Very high degree of emotionality. Hi, Rhonda. Yeah, historic 2 inches for snow, but Shari is our power for 2 days and counting. You just plug right into Shari. Would you hook some electrodes up to her and just tap into her bioelectric field? I would buy into that. She's a dynamo. Hi, Natasha. Nice to see you. It's the Power Coffee Power Hour, also known as 15 Minutes of Flame. As we all assemble, we gather into the hall. Yeah, so I've been feeling this this energy with this Mars Pisces conjunct Neptune, 6 inches north of Weaverville. No loss of power. I got a nice little coterie of people from North Carolina that are in this chat room and listen on regular basis. Thanks to Chris and Shari and Joe and a few other folks there too. It's great to always have you as part of the experience. Yeah, so there's a lot. I think there's a lot of victimization energy out there right now. A lot. There's a lot of. We can get into some Mars and Neptune, Mars, Pisces, Mars conjunct Neptune today. I think it'll be maybe sort of the foundation of the show. But it feels like if people have a chip on their shoulder, or if they feel like their expectations have been dashed, or life isn't working out for them, it's all, both barrels blazing. So just keep your eye on that. Don't fall prey. Don't fall prey to other people's expectations that are dashed and point the finger at you and basically say you're the problem. It's, and a lot of the people, Chiron went direct yesterday. That's true. A lot of the people there's Emily, a lot of the people in the chat room and who listen to the show are, there's a degree of mindfulness and sensitivity that we work with, right? It's like my little sign off, use your head and serve, it's really hard to say when it's possible. This is this mindfulness and sensitivity. So we're not just these robots, we're not just these automatons, we're not machines. Thank God for that. We'll have plenty to deal with the machines and the days, weeks, months, years ahead. We're not machines because we're feeling people, right? We feel into things. We have empathy. We have some compassion, which I think is both. I think it's a strength, but at the same time, there's also this blending of mindfulness, which allows us to, see and look at the emotional landscape and figure out whether that's something that we want to participate in at times, whether we want to open ourselves up to it, whether or not we want to take something as sort of a moment of teaching, a moment of truth, incorporate it into our lives, or reject it wholly, right? These two realities, the emotional reality, the mental reality, and the commingling of the two is, a lot. That's our work in a lot of ways. So when we go through a period where it's heightened, where, from an astrological perspective with Mars and Pisces conjunct Neptune, and there tends to be feelings, a lot of high feelings, a lot of high emotionality, and a lot of, at times, maybe unchecked emotionality. When that happens, and we tend to be open on some level from an emotional standpoint, right? The sensitivity piece, it's like letting the barbarians into the gates. We have to really practice good boundaries and discernment, and this specifically during this time. It's very important. And I love me some Jupiter and Sagittarius. But when we get into Jupiter and Sagittarius, people can really be convinced of their own ability to be right and self-righteousness, right? Like, pointing fingers at people, right? So just be, there's a lot of interesting material, that's brewing out there and in there, but just be aware of the cycles, just be aware of sort of the larger ramifications. We're going to get into Paris today, and it will encompass some of this Mars and Pisces energy. And I'll tell you why. We'll get into it. But I'll give you a little case in point. So last night, I went out and I watched the football game because I don't get it here. It's one of the channels I don't get. I mean, I could put it on my computer, hook my TV, which I've done, but I wanted to watch the game. Classic Chicago Bears game, 20 degrees, and they've got a classic Chicago Bears defense. I wanted to watch the game. So I went to my place here in town. Shout out to Silver Creek, by the way. Not that they ever watch us, so it doesn't really matter. So I sat down. I'm sitting there watching the game, and this couple sits next to me. And there's a guy who's rather plain looking in some ways. He's wearing a Cockney cap. And then he has this woman with him, and she's wearing a nice red sort of Christmas beanie, and she's dressed up in red, and she's got blonde hair, and they're playing 80s music, and Madonna was being played while the game was on. She comes in and She starts dancing around, and she was cute. It's cute with this guy. I'm like, okay, they got a nice little thing going on, right? So I'm just minding my own business, watching the game, and I was wearing this Phillies cap, and that I got at the Phillies game this last summer. And I got, not because I'm a Philly fan. I was at the game and I liked the cap. I thought it was a cool cap. And so she decides she wants to have a conversation with me. So she breaks the wall and she says, "Well, I'm sorry. What kind of hat is that?" I said, "Well, it's a Phillies cap." And she said, "Oh, I thought so. I thought so. Oh God, how do you feel about the Eagles losing? I mean, I'm not a Cowboy fan or anything, but how do you?" It's like, I don't know. I'm not an Eagles fan, and I said, "And I'm not even a Phillies fan." Oh, well, I thought there was some meaning behind it. No, it's like, no, I just like the hat. I mean, that's true. So that was the entree, and then she, that wasn't enough. She wanted more conversation, right? More conversation. So talking more, and eventually migrates into politics. Now, the guy, super nice guy, really nice guy. He works for, I think, immigration and naturalization. Anyway, we start talking about politics, and she says, "How do you feel about Trump? How do you feel about Trump?" And I'm like, "Well, I think Trump is really complex." And what I experienced, like for the next 10 minutes, we talked longer than 10 minutes. But what I experienced for the next 10 minutes, I think typifies what's going on in our age. And that was, this woman was incredibly emotional. And she was like all about the babies and the families. And I'm like, well, first of all, Obama used tear gas. Obama separated families. But she was so caught up in this emotion, and she was so caught up about what Trump was doing to the Latino community in our country, right? The Hispanic community in our country. Like, well, what is he doing? What is he? And I kept asking her, and she couldn't and I didn't do this to put her on the spot, but I kept asking her, well, what is he doing? And she would go off about the separating. I said, Obama did that, and I'm not here to defend Trump. I'm not. But she was just wound up with all this emotion, all this pre-programmed emotion. And what's interesting is the guy she's with works for INS, I think. That was the underlying statement, underlying theme there. And he was representative of the silent majority in a lot of ways. And I said, look, the best thing that Trump ever did was that he basically blew up the PC box. He blew it up, and he gave people, for better or worse, the license to speak. It's not always pretty. It's not always pretty. People who have had their tongues tied for decades, all of a sudden now they're like, I can say these things. Sometimes it comes out, rather awkward. But that was the best thing that Trump ever brought to us. And that's what I said. And then she said, well, look what it's created. I'm like, well, what has it created? What has it created? Well, the world is crazy. Well, why is the world crazy? Is it because, Trump did it? And again, I'm not defending Trump. I'm just looking at this as a process. And I said, look, we're part of a deconstruction phase right now. This is where it's happening. This is what's going on. This is what's taking place. And, you're sitting in the cockpit of history. Get ready. It's happening. It's live. It's right now. And at the end of the whole thing, we talked about a lot of other stuff. In the end, she says, let me give you a big Christmas hug. Right? I'm like, okay, fine. But to me, it typifies in a lot of ways this collective mindset that is just completely run by these reactive emotional states. And man, we got to really keep our eyes on that. That's that Mars Pisces energy, the Mars Neptune conjunction and Pisces energy. It was like, no, at the end of the day, I was just into having an inquiry with you. It is funny, right? It's funny that some people, it's like she got into future scenarios. She was like prognosticating, and I like the woman. Don't get me wrong. I'm not dissing her. She was, future scenarios about my life and my family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. She said, "Well, this is going to turn out this way," and blah 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 blah. I'm like, I don't know that. I don't know that. And I'm not sure you do either. But that's okay. I'll take your sentiment, and I know you're doing your best to, provide me with a cup of hope. You know, Great, I'll take it. But again, it was symbol. It was more than symbolic. It was an action, right? I saw like this kind of heavily charged emotional mindset, and it was like, okay, wow, this is it. This is, people are walking around with these feelings all the time. These feelings they're really powerful generators of experience, and they're really powerful generators of contact and connection. It's through emotion that we bring things into our life, or we repel them or reject them, combination of both. Anyway, it was eye opening. It was to me, these moments are little tiny slivers, the micro to the macro. So let's go to the macro. Let's talk about what's happening in France, because that enters into the Mars Pisces conversation. Correct. What does Pisces rule? It rules fuel, liquids. That's what Pisces rules, liquids, alcohol, right? Opioids, drugs, fuel, diesel, regular fuel, steam, oil. These are all Piscean like qualities or attributes or things that are related to Pisces. Okay. Mars is what? Mars is aggression. We have people in France ostensibly fighting for cheaper fuel, but it's become something more than that now. And other countries now in Europe are starting to begin this domino process and this domino effect. And it's not being reported on in this country. The mainstream media is staying as far away as possible. And the bottom line is that people are waking up. They're tired of this globalist shit. They're tired of the same people making the same choices, and they're getting to the point where they also know, just like what the Who said, we won't get fooled again. The new boss is same as the old boss. They know that that's coming too, right? So in order to keep this false paradigm in place, the people that are controlling this false paradigm are going to have to get really, really super, super creative in order to, to continue to move into this new order, which is what I talked about last week. And that was this idea that the new order, or the new liberal order, which is what Mike Pompeo was talking about, that it was about a network of nationalist states that would still be under the umbrella and the rubric of a new world order. Like, that's creative, right? Okay, we'll give you your nationalism, but we're going to tie it together in this new thing that we're doing, right? I'm not sure which is worse, to be honest with you, because I mean, look at the people who are pimping it out. Really, do you really want to like trust or hang out with these people? And, do you want to hang out with Mike Pompeo? How about having drinks with Mike Pompeo? What do you think that would be like? So it's like, let's be clear about this. Or John Bolton. I heard John Bolton likes to drink. He's very, very into scotch. I'd like to get that guy liquored up. Let his lips, sort of dance a little bit. That would be fun, I think. Steve Bannon would be a guy I'd like to drink with. So why don't we segue into Steve Bannon? Excuse me. Steve Bannon has been basically working. Let me see if I can find this thing. Give me 1 second here. Steve Bannon has been working. Hold on. Here it is. Steve Bannon has been in Europe, working Europe for this kind of nationalistic cause that he believes in, right? So Trump the Trump campaign really took off when Bannon got involved. And Bannon got involved because he saw that Trump represented. There was a speech. He talks about this moment. And he saw Trump give a speech, and it was about national identity, populism, and he at that point he believed that Trump got it. He's like, okay, here's the guy. This is the guy that I can attach my wagon to. And I don't think Trump gets elected without two things. I think Bannon plays a huge role in the election of Trump. Maybe not as big as maybe what Bannon thinks, but it's significant. And then, of course, I do believe that the WikiLeaks material kind of sealed the deal. Okay. So here's Bannon. Now he's in France. Bannon's become like this sort of gin-blossomed version of Thomas Jefferson. Because you look at Bannon's face, and you can tell that Bannon has had a few cocktails over the course of his lifetime. Anyway, he's been hanging out in Europe for roughly the last year, which is good for him because he's a Sagittarius. Like, this is the year that Steve Bannon could have the type of year that he wanted about 3 or 4 years ago. And look, you may think that Steve Bannon is many different things, right? He could be, maybe dyed in the wool, populist, bigot, whatever, right? But I will say this. I'll say this about Steve Bannon. And some of these people in the public eye, like when he got basically drummed out of the White House, thanks to Jared Kushner, Steve Bannon had a lot of disgrace. People were like, they were going after Steve Bannon. Oh, look what happened. The architect of the Trump administration. Look at him. Look at him. Guy picked himself off his feet. And he's like, okay, I'm going to go to Europe because, number one, I might be sponsored there. He's got his own money, but I'm sure he gets other people's money. He's got his own little think tank going on. But he also understood that this was an area that was being literally flooded with not just globalist ideas and ideologies, but a globalist strategy of weaponizing migration. And so he's gone all in Europe. So I'm going to read this. This is Bannon and Le Pen join anti-UN migration pact meeting in Flemish Parliament. Okay, so Bannon is now this kind of figurehead in a true Sagittarian fashion in another country, and kind of leading this charge towards this anti-globalist referendum. I'm going to read it. Former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon and Marine Le Pen, who's a Leo, by the way, so you have Sagittarius and Leo, the leader of the French right-wing National Rally political party and a former French presidential candidate, arrived on Saturday to the Flemish Parliament in Brussels to attend a meeting against the UN Global Compact for Migration. The meeting was organized with the support of the Europe of Nations and Freedom, a Eurosceptic group of the European Parliament. At the beginning of the meeting, its host listed the main provisions of the pact, which is expected to be formally endorsed at an intergovernmental conference in the Moroccan city of Marrakesh at the beginning of next week. Isn't it interesting that the UN is going to hold this thing in Morocco? Fascinating. The hosts claim that the pact was a suicidal one for Europe was met with applause. Representatives of the right-wing Flemish party Vlaams Belang are also taking part in the meeting as they firmly oppose the idea of Belgium signing the pact. The meeting comes after threats made earlier in the week by the largest party of the Belgian ruling coalition, the New Flemish Alliance, to leave the coalition of Belgian Prime Minister Charles Michel signed the UN Global Compact for Migration in Marrakesh. The UN Global Compact for Migration finalized on July 13th. It's a Cancerian date by all UN member states, except the United States, represents the international community's attempt to establish a common global approach to all aspects of international migration. The pact comprises 23, interesting number, objectives for better managing migration at local, national, regional, and global levels. The landmark pact has raised controversy across Europe as certain countries believe the deal will put restriction on their national migration policies. You think? You think? Of course. Of course it will. Of course it will. Remember, they said, well, it's not really a binding treaty. That's what they always say. Don't worry. Don't worry. You won't get pregnant, I promise. Don't worry. Wham! 9 months later. Yeah, probably 3 months later, you got, Houston, we have a problem. That's the way it works. So Bannon, very interesting. Very, very interesting in terms of his, how do I say this, rebirth in some ways, casting himself in a new role, in a new place, in a not typical, but a very, very strategic Sagittarian fashion. Meanwhile, Trump has big problems. We're going to get to Trump. I want to talk more about what's going on in France. Again, Mars in Pisces, fighting for what? Fighting for fossil fuels, fighting for oil, fighting for cheap diesel. That's where it all starts. Now, remember, I talked about this. What was it? Was it Thursday or Friday of last week? And I talked about how I said, now I got the agency wrong, but I got the premise right. I said that the UN was going to be deployed to Paris. Well, it's not the UN. It's the EU army. Did you know that the EU had a standing army? Excuse me while I scratch my ear. The EU has a standing army. I'm going to read this. This is from News Punch. EU army deployed to Paris to crush French Revolution. The EU army has been deployed to the streets of Paris in an attempt to crush the historic French Revolution currently sweeping across France. Armored European Union military vehicles were filmed storming Paris on Saturday as hundreds of thousands of protesters continue to protest globalism. That's where it's gone. It started with fuel. All of a sudden, it's like, screw it. We don't want these people making decisions for us in the way that they've done. So we're seeing this uprising of the spirit. And we have to be careful because when we move into that state of energy and volatility, there can be some serious kind of hurting going on, right? When there's a state of chaos, people come in and say, okay, well, let's take advantage of this chaos. We can do this, we can do this, we can do this, and we can turn this event into this event. And, these people who like to, put these things together, ordo ab chao, out of chaos order. So France is in a very interesting and intense and vulnerable place because they're on the verge of a revolution. And if they get slammed down, really slammed down, then there's a really good chance that it won't happen again, right? That there's now this reality that's put into place. Like, yeah, you can rise up, you can get in the streets, you can wear yellow vests, you can stop going to work. But at the end of the day, it's just going to be a big thumb on your efforts. And that's a possibility. That's a real possibility. Okay, let me continue this. So here we go. This is from Christus Patriot. Very interesting image. The image is these EU tanks. They're blue, and these guys running through the streets of Paris with the hard, bulletproof plexiglass shields, the bayonets or the batons, Kevlar vests, the stormtrooper boots up to the knees, and these black helmets. So they're ready for business. They've rolled it out. This is what's going on, and they want to put people in their place. One particular video has caused a stir in social media after it showed heavily armored vehicles driving into the city as fires lit by protesters raged around them. I'm going to put this link in the chat room, and maybe you guys can check it out. Here we go. Let's just do this. That's the story that I'm reporting on. It's from News Punch. And there's some video in there, and I know that, you know, my image and video is so compelling that you don't want to turn your eyes away from me, but there's some interesting video in there that you may want to look at as it relates to this. It's pretty intense. I mean, think of, and by the way, this is something we might see here in this country. If Trump goes down the drain, and he's doing everything in his power now to stay alive, which I'm going to talk a little bit about as well, right? But if Trump wound up getting impeached or taken out, they've already got plans in place to deal with civil unrest. It would be like our National Guard or our standing army. But just think, right? This is the EU. This is the EU army coming into France. How is that not an act of war? Really, if you think about it, we've got these nice new tanks, spiffy tanks, revved up and ready to go. It looks like they've got some LRAD capabilities. You know, the LRADs are that sound, high-pitched sound, make your ears bleed if you get too close. So this is a big deal. So it talks about, but rather than bearing the French tricolor flag, the vehicles bore the distinct starred EU flag, which critics have said is a sign an EU army is drawing closer to existence. It's here. Furious Twitter users have also said it is a sign the bloc BLOC, which the UK voted to leave in 2016, is prepared to crush any dissent in any of its member states. You bet your ass it is. One person commented, "The Euro flag disturbs me on vehicles." Another wrote, "With the European flag on." One outraged person shared a picture of Macron alongside a quote attributing him, "We need more Europe." Brits also jumped on the thread, claiming the vehicles and flag give an insight into a future in an expanding European Union. One UK user said, "Paris gives us the first glimpse of the future under EU rule. The planned army is being put in place to repress any citizens that dare question the superstate agenda." EU markings on the side. Wake up, Europe. The EU are a clear threat to the survival of Europe and European culture. If Macron and Merkel get their army, they will use it against the people, wrote another. That is absolutely 100% true. So this is what's going on in Europe, right? This is what's happening in France. It's a big deal. Big deal. I'm going to read you this from TASS. Of course, it's the Russian news agency. Over 1,700 protesters detained during the Yellow Vest protests in France. This is from yesterday. Some 1,726 people were detained during Saturday's Yellow Vest protests in France. French Interior Minister Christophe Castaner has said at least 1,220 protesters have been placed in custody, the minister said, according to BFM TV channel. Most protesters were hauled off in Paris, and 619 of them were sent to pretrial detention centers. Many protesters carried weapons on them. How about that? But their lawyers claimed that their clients sought to express strong protest, but did not use violence. Let's see. Most demonstrators who are in custody are suspected of plotting to commit violence or inciting a crime. Okay, so now it's a crime, or if you protest publicly, it is a borderline crime in Europe. Probably not just in Europe, by the way. On Saturday, France was hit by the fourth wave of protests launched by the Yellow Vest movement, which criticizes raising fuel prices, taxes, and costs. In Paris, Lyon, Marseille, Nantes, and Toulouse, the protesters clashed with police. I bet you the police are the UN people. A lot of the police are not fighting their own people. More than 125,000 people took to the streets across France, and at least 135 were hurt during clashes in Paris. Mass protests triggered by the rising fuel prices and taxes flared up in France on November 17th. France's authorities announced that starting January 1st, 2019, petrol and diesel prices would rise by 3 euro cents and 6.5 euro cents, respectively. That's with, fuel that's already at a really high cost. One of the factors behind the price hikes is the government's move to introduce an environmental tax on greenhouse gas emissions. Bunch of horse shit. Total horse shit. Sorry. People are waking up. Do the people have enough spirit in order to continue this awakening? It's not going to stop with France. I'm sorry. It is not going to stop with France. I mean, there's a lot more going on, right? There's a lot more. Investment Watch headline here: the French revolt against the New World Order, the homogenization of countries into a new one world order. Governance meme is a meme whose time has come and gone. So the New World Order is, well, that's why they recast it with Pompeo, a liberal world order. Free-thinking people do not want the suppression and surveillance society the NWO seeks to impose globally. People are waking up. It's the bottom line. Whether or not the people actually have the tools and the heart in order to push back, and also have, again, the mental capability and the intellectual capacity to understand that there could be these kind of new paradigms or new pens to be herded into. That's another big piece of this. I'm telling you, we're living in historical times, absolutely historical times, and it is on. We are now entering into, like, the metaphor is like if you go canoeing or kayaking, whatever. You're in a river, right? And you're about ready to hit the rapids. We're ready to hit the rapids. The rapids are coming. So this is where things get, begin to get a little white knuckly, a little exciting. But it's an important time. You're here. You're here right now. You've got loge seats to history in the making. Wherever it goes, I mean, we're going to find out, right? We're going to find out. But at the very least, you got front row seats. I think it's I think it's kind of cool, to be honest with you. We're sitting here watching, observing, participating in our own way with this massive change that's taking place, or the potential for a massive change to take place. Trump is in trouble. I'm not going to get into all the specifics and the details. I'll probably do that tomorrow. I'll put together a more comprehensive show on Trump. But you can tell he's in trouble because he is just hired, or not hired. He wants to nominate a guy by the name of James Barr to the position of Attorney General. And James Barr was very, very influential in the GHW Bush presidency. He was one of the key figures in essentially covering the tracks of the drug crimes, the cocaine crimes, and the Bush family syndicate. He's a big-time insider and a fixer, and he's good at making things go away. This is Trump's new hire, theoretically, for the Attorney General post. So there are a couple things about this. Is Trump doing this so that he could just bring in more insiders and more swamp creatures and let them kind of run things so he can save his ass? Is this what's going on? Is this what's happening? People are jumping off the Trump train. I'm sorry, they are. Tucker Carlson, in a kind of a really lucid moment last week, said he's not fit to be president. Not fit from a mental standpoint, but he's not fit in the sense that he can't handle the job. And he's basically not fulfilled any of his promises, which is, neither here nor there, because most politicians don't do that. But, Trump offered a lot. When he came in on that Bannon-esque populist wave, and I do believe Trump believed that. I do believe that he thought if he could get in there, I mean, and this is the pride and the hubris in some ways of a Leo rising person with Mars on the ascendant, that he could conquer anything, even with his skeletons. And he's got skeletons. Don't kid yourself. They all have skeletons. And that's why we live in a continual state of constant corruption, because everybody's got shit on everybody else. And then if you pull this, everything just kind of collapses, including whatever reality or whatever position the person pulling the string holds. So they're tenuously all holding and kludging this Tower of Babel, that has basically been erected with, feces, right? Instead of adobe clay, it's just all shit. It's this Tower of Babel that's been erected with shit. And then if it all comes down, everybody goes. Everybody goes. So they all begrudgingly, let each other lie. They all begrudgingly let each other, commit crimes, cover up the crimes. Nobody does any time. But you start to stray off that script, you start to stray off course, guess what happens? Well, yeah. Yeah, you know what happens. You're back in the box, Jack. You get Robert Mueller breathing down your neck every day. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine Trump meeting with his lawyers every single day? Every single day. For hours. I mean, it cuts into whatever you think of Trump. It cuts into that person's ability to do a job. You look at these presidencies. You look at like Nixon, the whole Watergate thing. You look at Clinton and the Monica Lewinsky thing. You look at Trump. These are all pretty, powerful kinds of ongoing investigations. And I wouldn't say that Clinton was an outsider. He's an insider because of his connection to the Bushes. But clearly, that was an effort for Clinton to capitulate. It's like, okay, we're going to put the screws to you, but here's what you're going to do. You're going to go over to Kosovo and you're going to go over to Bosnia. You're going to bomb the shit out of those places. Even if you don't want to, that's what you're going to do. There's going to be a NATO army and our army is going to be embedded and you're going to be running basically a war in the Balkans and you're not going to say a damn thing about it. And by the way, you're going to continue to insert sanctions into Iran. You're going to control the airspace and you're going to shoot shit down and you're not going to say boo about it. And that's a fact, Jack. So Clinton was compromised. This is what's happening with Trump. He's being compromised. He's doing everything in his power now to stay in power. It's not like keep your friends close, your enemies closer. I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think he's making a deal. He's got this guy, James Barr, coming in. So basically what we now have, what the Trump administration has become, is a combination of Bush and a little bit of Clinton. People voted for Trump because Trump wanted to have a working relationship with Russia, and not a working relationship like in the sense that the Democrats, the progressives, or the liberals, or the Rachel Maddows of the world would say that's a working relationship. Different, like on a global level, like let's turn down the volume, let's turn down the rhetoric. Instead, it's gotten pumped up, and at every opportunity that Trump has had or used in order to try to engage in some form of diplomacy with Putin, it has been shot down. He's had to walk everything back. Okay. He may as well be Hillary Clinton now in that regard. And his legacy is going to be a very fractured and twisted legacy in a lot of ways. But, people are jumping off the Trump train. Tucker's jumping off the Trump train. His little, alt-right, little Zionist minions, I'm sorry, on Twitter, like Jack Posobiec and Cernovich and all these people, they're jumping. They're jumping the train. You know why? Because they know that their future is not tied to Trump. Their future is not tied to Trump. Their future is now indeterminate. So it's a very interesting thing to watch because these people gained all these Twitter followers because it was all about MAGA and winning and MAGA and winning. I mean, you go back 6 months and look at Jack Posobiec's Twitter feed, winning, winning, winning. Now you look at his Twitter feed, it's like leaving, leaving, leaving. So these are signs that something is really happening. And apparently the Cohen thing, again, I'll do some more on this tomorrow. There's a theory that Cohen wasn't just wired, but he was an informant all along. That he was embedded as an informant. I think what we're looking at with Trump is like a really, really sophisticated sting operation. Very sophisticated sting operation. And that they knew that he was going to get elected. And they probably had at least a year and a half to 2 years to work on this. I'd say probably a year and a half. And you get people who are dedicated, intelligence agency operatives. You get a budget. You get an administration that was more than just cooperative, but was in cahoots with the sting operation. All of a sudden now, you've got a very, very powerful machine that can make things happen, right? So there was a sting operation involved with Trump for a long time, and we're seeing it now come to fruition. And then you look at what's happened with his inability to actually do certain things. At every turn, he's been rebuked and rebuffed by activist judges. He doesn't even talk about immigration anymore. He's just fighting for his life now, and he's hoping like hell that people like Sheldon Adelson and the Mercers and Jared Kushner and Goldman Sachs and Bibi Netanyahu and the Zionists and Shabbat. I think he's leaning on these people heavily to keep his ass out of trouble. And they're going to mold him. They're going to turn him into whatever they want or need. Both sides will do that. He'll become compliant. And this will be the sort of the demoralization of, or the point where the people who voted for Trump, the MAGAs of the world, the MAGA army, this is where the point of demoralization, I think, could really kick in for them. Now, the whole QAnon thing has been set up to be an antidote to that, right? That people can still buy in and invest in this other plan that's taking place, while what we're seeing is completely counter to what that other plan is. So, interesting times. I think he's in trouble, and he's doing everything he can now to just stay in the pocket. Apparently, one of the things that I've heard is he wants to kick Pence out. He wants to kick Pence out. He could kick Pence out. And here's the real bizarre rumor is that he wants to kick Pence out and bring Nikki Haley in as the new vice president. Because Nikki Haley is the darling of the Zio set, and they want her to become president. They want her to be the first woman president. Oh boy! So there's a lot going on right now. There's a hell of a lot happening, and so I'll do more on Trump tomorrow. But it's not looking great. Let's put it that way. Okay, it's just not looking great. But there are interesting things happening in the world, and I'm sure there are interesting things happening in your life. Just don't attach yourself to people who have unrealistic expectations of you. Don't attach yourself to people whose lives are troubled or challenged. and they're looking for somebody to blame, to point a finger at, right? There's small little worlds. They'll look around and say, who's the most vulnerable? Who could I hurl some insults or some of my pain at? Just don't attach to it, right? Let it go. Let it go. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Let me check in with you guys in the chat room, see what's going on in there. See how you're doing. Activist judges. How about the Bostonian judge caught by Judicial Watch? She stalled. Yes, there's activist judges all over the place. All over the place. I got my first hit of experience of an activist judge right here in Fredericksburg. I went to a 4th of July Democratic Party cookout just to see what they were about. And this judge talked. Man, was she made no bones about it being an activist judge. It's like, wow, this is real. This is true. This actually happens. Annie Brito, Eileen Kepper, I left twice and kept getting sucked back here. I say I was gaining momentum. 3rd time's a charm. I think it's slow moving swamp energy here. Stagnant, thick like air. Oh, we're talking about Florida now. I see. All right. Thanks for allowing me to join you all today. Sorry for my epic epis in your comments section last week. It's all good. We're working shit out, right? We are working shit out. We're working it out. As long as you have some level of consciousness and humility and respect, you can fuck up, right? Because we're not perfect. It's the way it goes. Let's see. There's Fifth Wall. What's going on, Fifth Wall? It says, let's see, Dungeon Master Michael Avenatti got his ass handed to him by a judge, ordered to pay $160,000 per month to his estranged wife. Sometimes there is justice in the world, and it's divine justice is what it is. It does happen. Okay, I'm out of here. Thank you for joining me today. Hey, Thinking Astrologically and Beyond went really, really well this last weekend. Lots of really positive comments. It's not too late to sign up. You can still go to my website and you'll get the first webinar. I'll include that. And if you do sign up late, I won't give you a discount, but here's what I will do. I'll include a little Christmas something. I got a nice little webinar on Chiron. So if you want to sign up for the next 5 sessions of Thinking Astrologically and Beyond, I'll include my Chiron webinar, which is a pretty good webinar about Chiron. It's an audio and slide presentation, which I think some of you people might really enjoy. All right. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to see what's possible. For my good friends in North Carolina, you stay warm. And everybody else where the temperatures are dropping below freezing, the same. Stay warm and stay cozy, and stay connected, stay loose, and stay aware. I'm Robert Phoenix. I'll be back tomorrow. Thanks.